Vyasan. Vyasan Pillay. Again, you told me that 95% of the people mispronounce your name, and your parents are aghast at that, I'm sure. Did I pronounce it right?
You did.
I've been practicing, so I should have done. For many years, I've been calling you Vyasan, and you've been very politely smiling and not correcting me, so I appreciate that. Vyasan Pillay of TMX. So, as I do with all my guests, we got lots to talk about. I've got my list here, and we're going to talk about all of that. But the starting point, I think, is you and TMX. I'm going to put your LinkedIn profile and the TMX website, so people can look that up. But let's have a bit of an introduction about that. So, Vyasan, the man, the boy, the legend. Give us a little bit of a story of your market data career.
Sure thing. Hi, David. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. I've watched many of your podcasts so far, and I've only seen legends of market data here. So I'm humbled to be.
You are another. You are another.
I appreciate that. As the lawyer in the room is telling me to say, anything I say is my own opinion and not that of the TMX. But so who's Vyasan and what is the TMX? So I've started my career in market data about 15 years ago in a country called South Africa. Nice warm place. And
not quite Canada. No.
Not quite, yes. A company called iNet Bridge, which is more recently been purchased out by a company called Iris. I then moved across to the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, staying within the market data realm, focusing more in on the indices business, whilst also covering the equities and derivatives that they had. And then came across to Canada, actually for the second time in my life, and brought my wife and kids along. So, here to settle for the future. Not as warm as South Africa, but definitely as warm in the summertime here. It's amazing.
A bit more varied in temperatures.
Absolutely. So currently I'm more in the real-time space. I'm the product manager for our real-time feeds. And I also am the product manager for our TMX IP, which is the information processor. And we'll get on a little bit of that a little bit later. So that's Vyasan. A little bit on the TMX. So what is the TMX? It's actually quite a group of companies. So more well known for its exchanges. We have the TSX, the Toronto Stock Exchange, as well as the TSXV, which is the venture. You can see those as TSX being main board and venture being the junior board. Along with that is the Alpha Exchange, which is an ATS or an alternative trading system, and then your two clearing houses as well. Before I get into clearing,
the Montreal,
we also have the derivative side, which I was about to say, which is the Montreal Exchange, which is, from what I understand, is also the oldest official exchange in Canada, and so they process all the derivative data.
Was Montreal always only derivatives? I mean,
no, there was an equities section that was originally acquired within the Canadian Venture Exchange, which is then purchased by TSX, that became the TSX Venture Exchange. So originally there were exchanges in multiple provinces, including Montreal. Montreal had equities as well as derivatives. And then there was a consolidation of exchanges because to make trading simpler, to make systems a lot easier, that consolidation became that Canadian Venture Exchange.
Was there ever a Vancouver Stock Exchange?
There was, I believe it was, so there was a Vancouver, there was Alberta as well had one. So there was a couple of provinces that had one, including the Toronto, and there was a few broker dealers that came together as well to have their own exchanges.
But it's all come together in predominantly under the TMX umbrella.
It kind of worked with each province focusing on certain sectors, so like mining and the likes. And so now it's all kind of brought in under the umbrella of TMX. So that's TSX and TSX Venture being where all of those provincial exchanges kind of fell in.
Alpha, which is an ATS, is the phrase ATS in Canada the same as ATS in the US? Is it similar concept?
Quite similar, yes. You trade stocks that are listed on listing venues. There's 3 listing venues in Canada, which is TSX, NEO, as well as CSE.
Got it. Okay. Okay, so that's set the scene. And again, we were talking sort of offline a little bit, because I did by ChatGPT sort of research on the Canadian market, and I think it sort of put out that Canada, I'm just trying to look at it. Yeah, I've got the list in front of me. I think it was, the US markets, China, then Japan, Hong Kong, UK, and then you sort of get to Canada in a sort of ranking of 6 or 7 for Canada. And I mean, in terms of, I think you guys have strong visibility. I mean, I've known you guys, TMX, TSX before it, even Montreal. In my travels in the market data industry over the last 20, 30 years, you guys have got quite a strong profile.
Absolutely.
I suppose that is a good thing. But
it definitely is. We absolutely punch above our weight in that regard. If you look at global holdings, Canada is usually about 5% of people's portfolios. So it's not a huge player from that perspective, but our brand, our presence across markets is absolutely massive in relation to what we our size. And we within our space in Datalinks look at value of data to exchanges. We plot the value that they provide, the number of volume of shares traded, as well as the pricing of their market data. And we are well below the median in relation to that, but we're also not in the likes of the NYSEs and NASDAQs of the world. The US market is quite large and a very big portion of people's portfolios. We often find ourselves being compared to them because geographically we're in the same area, but we are in very different realms of business. We are kind of closer to an Australia Stock Exchange. Or
I was thinking, Australia. Yeah, I would. In fact, quite often, I've been to Australia many times, and we sort of say Australia, Sydney, and Toronto. There's a sort of a similarity that we observe, that I observe. Funny enough, I've just recorded, and it will be coming out shortly before your episode. Mark Randall from the JSE had a nice chat with him, and I think they would, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange being part of Africa. I think they're still somehow under this emerging markets. Again, these phrases, they're not legal. They're just some sort of marketing phrase that people use or investors use to sort of categorize. But, so Canada would definitely not be in any way part of quote unquote emerging markets, because it's a sophisticated first world country and what have you. But again, in my conversation with Mark, and I think it goes to your point about punching above your weight, you got to be careful. If it gets too small, there's a certain point, there's a sort of minimum point where you've got to make people bother to take an interest in you. If you ever slip down too low, then there's a danger. You're just, you're a rounding error, and nobody wants that. You're definitely not that. But it's I can understand why you want to punch above your weight.
Absolutely. And as an exchange, there's a level of pressure that gets put on you from that perspective. The people that are, like in myself in the product role, you have to stay above the times. You have to stay ahead of technological advances. You have to stay ahead of what is upcoming from our clients' requirements, what's upcoming from regulatory requirements, and how do we create things that keep us in that realm. Right, there's a push to stay at the ceiling. You don't want to fall too far down, and again, our geographical proximity requires us to stay at that helm. And so I'm constantly looking how are we going to create something, the next thing? How are we staying ahead of cloud and AI and any new kind of technology or use case where, for instance, clients may be going towards OTC, and how do we keep abreast of those kinds of changes?
Well, another thing, because you're the same time zone, not effectively, exactly, because I think you guys are on Eastern time. the same as New York, whereas Chicago's one central. Because Chicago's just below. Anyway, that's another conversation for another day about time zones. But why time zones are interesting. Again, I had John Willock, a Canadian, but talking about blue ocean technologies, which is this whole genre of 24, not 24/7, 24/5 trading, which is recognizing that there's an opportunity the way they do it is the time zone is 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. Eastern, I think. When everybody in Toronto and New York has left the office, gone to bed and whatever, and maybe the Far East is beginning to wake up. But the point is, this point about punching above your weight and promoting yourself is because it's a global market. There's the fact that I've seen TMX when I've been in London, when I've been in Asia, all over the world.
Absolutely.
Because
it's difficult to stay ahead of. You have to be, moving with the times and staying in the headlines. And how do you stay in the headlines? By doing the right things. Staying in the headlines is not what we're interested in. What we're interested in is things like, how do we service our clients? And that, because our core is around those values, that puts us on those headlines, right? So we try to make sure that whenever we're doing anything, it's client-centric, and it makes sure that I'm lucky enough in my history to have worked with people who have always guided me towards client-centric ideas.
What you're saying, I think, is exactly the right approach, because I come from a sort of marketing, sales, business background, and it's like, ask your customers, what are their problems? What are their issues? What are their complaints about? You've got to ask them to then change things, either improve things that have gone wrong or do more of what the right thing is. But I've detected recently there's a reticence, a nervousness on part of some customers. They feel some participants, exchanges or data vendors or whatever, are asking too many questions. They're asking all these questions. And the suspicion, the cynicism on the customer side is, they're just doing that to understand how we're using their data and what we're doing with it.
What else they can
so they can hit us with another big charge about, what you've heard.
I fully understand where you're coming from. And maybe this talk to one of the points we want to talk to which is how our exchange is creating new value, right? Yeah. And yes, I think that has been something that has happened in the past, where clients, where exchanges go out and go like, "Oh, what did you do? Oh, how did you do it? Okay, let me now start charging." I think that's absolutely something that has happened in the past. When I say that, I'm talking the last 50 years, when market data has really come up, where it was pretty hard. I think there was a few hard people who had to put legs underneath the market data industry, make sure that it's something that people are seeing. The next generation of people, the important piece there is evolving that and making sure that they are staying in that client-centric space and are doing things that are specifically around value. For instance, we've created, I've personally have created something where a new data vendor could get data for free and help them build up their business. And that's off the back of continuously talking to new entrants and saying, okay, what do you want to do? And everyone says, I have the most amazing idea. It's going to change the world. And this is my app. And then you talk to them about the market data fees. And then you have to pick them up off the floor after they've fallen off their chair. And so you have to make it. And so that pain of picking somebody off the floor, I'd rather go to them and say, I have a program that allows you to do this for free, and allows you to build up your client base. And as you build up your client base, you'll get up to full pricing like everybody else is. And that allows you to then get off the feet. What that does, though, is that the end client, the mom and pops, has access to more things, because we're not completely shutting the door on new entrants.
And I mean, we're jumping ahead of some of the things we're going to talk about, but I think the order doesn't matter as long as we cover the point. We're going to talk more about pricing later on, but just still on this topic of the cynicism that I've heard, and I'm not sure I totally agree with that. I understand some of it. I think there is some slightly cynical activity on the behalf of some producers of data, as you alluded to. So that's how you use the data, and you do that with it. We haven't been charged. Now we'll start charging you because you're getting extra value out of our data. We'll now charge you more because we've noticed you're getting more value out of it. And Absolutely. I think the argument from the customer side has been, well, it was us being clever. We worked out how
Yes.
to really make something clever out of your data. It was our clever idea, not yours. So that's an interesting one. I don't know the answer to it, but there's another thing that I came across, and I was having a conversation with somebody at a customer firm, and we were talking about some problems that customer firms have had. I can't remember the specifics, but there were a series of problems. And I said, well, why, talk to the exchanges and see if they, but if we told the exchanges about all these problems, they would go and build a solution and then charge us for it. And they said it as if that was somehow wrong. But that's the basics of business. If customers have got problems and a supplier, whoever that supplier is, can learn about those problems and build a fix, a solution,
absolutely,
then that company's going to sell it to them. I mean, it's like, we've solved your problem, but pay us some money for it. I mean, that's just business. So
you think about it like a credit card, for example. If you had this massive debt that's going on and you haven't if you pick up the phone early to your bank and go, hey, this is the story. It's tough for me. How can we work this out? They'll put a plan together. You will pay them, but you'll pay them on terms. If they find out 3 years later that, oh, this thing is massive, we need to collect now, this person is then going to have to be asked to pay a lump sum, or there's big interest.
And I think that's alluding to a lot of the history with exchanges and customers of finding historical inaccuracies and then being hit with large back charges and whatever. I mean, maybe they actually should have paid that, but actually they haven't budgeted for it. We'll come on to more of this. I think we'll go back to this, but I'm conscious there were a couple of topics that we were going to try and talk about sort of before we got onto that stuff. And I think one of them, something close to my heart, is the human capital of market data. And, what's going on in that space? Where are we getting the new talent? What's happening to the older talent? I consider myself, definitely the older talent, and I'm trying to retire. Dave Hill, a great talent, a massive talent, lost to the industry now. I mean, I bless him. I wish him all the best in his retirement. But you could argue that that's a loss. I don't think you could argue. It is a loss to TMX, and it's a loss to the industry. We're stuck with you now, Vyasan, instead.
The industry as a whole, yes. I actually reported to Dave for a couple of years, the majority of my time here at the TMX, and he, a great individual personally as well as.
We love Dave. I mean, I'm using that as an example, but that is an example of where at one end the industry is losing experience and knowledge, and where is the new talent coming in? And I've got points of view on that. I'm curious. I mean, one of the things I observed from Canada, Toronto. I mean, Toronto's a lovely place, full of lovely people. I mean, you Canadians are lovely. I mean, it's said by many people, but I'm going to say it again. Canadians are lovely people. But Toronto's small. I mean, it's not that Greater Toronto isn't small, but the financial district. I mean, I was shocked. I've been to a couple of FISD events, one at TMX, one at, I think, BMO. We've been to down the Elephant and Castle pub and all that sort of stuff in Toronto. But everywhere's 2 minutes walk between. I'm going to BMO, then I'm going to RBC, then I'm going to Scotia, then I'm going to Toronto Dominion. Oh, and I'll pop in on the TMX, and it's like everything. I mean,
is that be 15 minutes early for every meeting?
Yeah, but how is the talent pool for market data in Toronto? Are you constrained that your talent pool needs to be Toronto, or do you look wider than that? I mean, how do you approach this?
We're not constrained. I mean, so caveat: the job market today is very difficult. We're coming out of a time of COVID, a time when things had expanded quite rapidly. There looks like there's a bit of a contrition at the moment. It looks like there's about a lot of people who are still looking and are finding it difficult. I know when we post roles, I've seen upwards of 400 applicants for a role, and it's very difficult to get through all that. And those applicants I see them across the globe as people from all across the globe that will apply. And so, where do we get our talent pool? Take one step back from that is a lot of the time it's a lot easier to move people up from internal, because market data is generally very flat structures. you'll see there are probably 2 or 3 rings until you get to the head of market data. Maybe in most often cases a lot less. In which case, when you have a new role, it's either a similar role to what 2 or 3 other people on your team are doing, or it's a role that is very niche. So when it's niche, it's pretty easy to then be able to move people internally. It is also difficult to get people from outside, because when you have a niche role, let's say it's a specific auditing role, let's say it's a specific product manager of real-time data, it's not easy to find people with the skills that do that all the time. Market data industry globally is quite small, as you're very aware. You probably know many of the people every person in the industry, and they stay there for many years because it's a small knit group of people. When we go to WIFIC next year, there's going to be majority of people we're going to see there. We know them already because I moved across from Johannesburg Stock Exchange to the TSX, and I'm dealing with people that I've dealt with for the last 10 years. Across 2 different exchanges, and so market data is generally very small, very difficult to get into. Often you'll have new entrants at the associate or the entry level stages, but to get people into the right strategic roles, it's often difficult to move them up. And so there has to be this level of like a succession planning, and there has to be a level of succession planning across the group. For instance, Dave, for instance, he would grow myself and my other colleagues so that we can all be able to step up. And that's only because at any one stage, you don't know who's going to be the person, right? And it makes it a difficult call for the people above him, because now you have all those people, and who's the right person for the role.
Have you seen much horizontal movement? What I mean by that is people moving. You're a stock exchange, an exchange, then you've got data vendors, and you've got the customer firms, and there's other firms, the technology providers, the sort of Googles and whatever. There's a whole myriad of different types of firms. I mean, Dave Hill, like me, I think he came from Reuters, from a data vendor, and then he's moved to an exchange, although both of those entities were selling data.
That's right.
So there was some similarity. But are you seeing in Toronto, is there any movement, from BMO or RBC into the exchange or into the data vendors or back and forth? Have you seen that?
It's majority of the time it's from the exchange outwards, most of the time, and that's because the key market data knowledge base has kind of grown easier within the exchange. If you think about a contract analyst, for example, they know our contracts like the back of their hand. That's very valuable to a bank. A bank procurement person may not know market data as well, and so that's a bit difficult for them to come backwards. Product wise, you could have a head of electronic trading at a bank who would know real-time data as much, but to move into market data, it would constrain them a little bit. They'll be, or into co-location product management, or it's probably a different realm. It's probably something that they'll feel like I can do a lot more at the bank than I can do at an exchange. And so yes, it's a very difficult talent pool, but it's also something you have to be very strategic about, because you want to get the right people on the bus.
I mean, we'll move off this topic in a second. But to stick on it just briefly, anything you really want, anything you're looking to the industry to help with that could improve this situation, and then coupled with that, any advice in what you've done? I mean, all the people out there who might be in a similar situation, any words of advice?
Yeah, I would say, looking upwards from where I am is the people who are very well situated in their roles, like yourself, like a Dave Hill, like a Michelle Tran, who's our president, people who have been in the industry for many years, and the people in the same positions in other firms. You're very well situated in your roles, and it's great to see people that are uplifting the ones below them, and uplifting from a perspective of teaching. I've learned bounds from the people that I have surrounded me, that I'm really, like I continually say, I'm very lucky to be around them. And same for the people underneath. Learn as much as you absolutely can. Not to expect changes every day, because that doesn't happen in market data. Market data, you expect it to happen a couple of times in a decade, maybe. It's really a slow moving kind of role. So
I think there's a word for that. Mentorship.
Yes.
Is and I think that's something in the FISD world that I'm still very involved in, has come up from time to time, trying to work out how to. I think in firms, it sounds like Dave was a mentor of yours, maybe not officially, but sort of effectively.
Absolutely. And at the same time, what I appreciate is that he was never scared of passing knowledge. Yeah. Sometimes you find in people in those positions, they're scared of saying, "Okay, I don't want to teach people," or they're not,
because they'll have my job. Yeah, it's
right. And I think if you're solidified just yourself, like the people that I have surrounded myself with, the people that I work with, my colleagues, no one's scared. We're all open to talk to each other and to learn from each other, because that creates a much better environment for everyone to. Like, I tie my shoes in the morning knowing I'm coming to work with people that I really enjoy working with.
That's a corporate culture thing, which and it sounds to me that there's a robust and good corporate culture. It probably comes from Michelle.
I feel like it could be corporate. I don't know how every other division functions, but I know it's definitely within our team, and I don't think it's necessarily. You're right. It does come from a Michelle perspective, which then talks to the division. Again, we don't know if that's the same at other companies or other divisions, right? So generally, you want to be able to.
Well, look, I'm going to swerve off in a different direction. We could talk for hours on the human capital side, but let's talk about one of the most exciting, exhilarating topics in market data: regulation.
Regulation.
A drum roll. Regulation. Ring the bells. So, how does regulation work in Canada? And you're going to tell me about provinces and federal and paint the picture of the equities market, or the financial markets, how they're regulated in Canada.
So let's talk first, just very briefly, geographically. Canada has 10 different provinces, as well as 3 different territories, which are separate from those 10 provinces. The 3 territories are federally managed, so there's not too much in terms of provincial governments. In Canada, we have provincial governments here, so there's a government
Ontario,
for
where you are.
Where we're situated, as well as the other provinces. Each one of those have their own regulator. So in Ontario, we have the OSC, the Ontario Securities Commission, as well as the same for BC, BCSC, the same for Alberta, and the likes, Saskatchewan, and all of them. Those all roll up into the CSA, the Canadian Securities
Is it Authority or Association?
Authority. The Canadian Securities Authority. And I left my mind for a second there. Canadian Securities Authority.
I'm an expert on Canada by now, you see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or ChatGPT is.
No. And so they speak to us individually, and they do a very good role of making sure that they manage, how we create product and what we do for clients. I'll touch on that in a moment. The other part is CIRO, which is a Canadian Investment Regulatory Organization, and they look after things like circuit breakers on stocks. They look after the interdealer brokers, the investment brokers. They make sure that a trader is not doing any nefarious trades. They do all that kind of market surveillance, and that is separate organization from us, the TMX. So how do we got regulated?
I'm going to I'll throw an observation in, and then you carry on. Didn't Canada perform very well during the Great Financial Crisis? I seem to have some memory that Canada was somehow better, or came out better than other. You're too young to probably remember that. You're probably
which financial crisis?
That was the 2008, 2007 one.
We did. In fact, 2008 was the year that TMX acquired MX and became TMX as a group. And so it bodes well in terms of how well we processed in that very difficult time. Housing in Canada, didn't have the issues that the US did.
The subprime and all that, yeah.
Absolutely. I know people in Canada will say housing prices are quite high right now. And so, especially in these very metropolitan areas, but, those things come and go with time. When we want to create something, it's not just an easy switch it on and go, kind of create something and launch it in a month. There's a lot of back and forth because they want to make sure that the market's fair, it's equitable, and it's the same for everyone, right? And so they have to delve quite deeply into, okay, you want to create X product. Tell me how it impacts the clients. Tell me how it impacts the banks. Tell me how it impacts the small brokers. And then why is it important for the market? And we have to take them down this road of what it looks like, why, and all those kinds of things. It's often a lot of meetings, a lot of documented responses, Q&As that come back and forth.
The benefit to you is the reputation of Canada as a stable, rule of law, a place that it's safe to invest in, I suppose, is the positive side.
Absolutely. I know when I work with them that when my mom invests, she's at a better space. I know when I create something, and that's a pressure as a product manager within exchanges, is that, especially the market data space, we are the window to the markets, right? You can't see any data without us. And so I know whenever I do something or create anything, it's potentially going to impact my family, my mom, my children, somewhere down the road. And so there's a pressure on me to do the right things then for them from that perspective, and knowing that I work with the regulators to make sure that that is the right moves that we're making for Canada as a whole, it just makes things a lot more stable for me.
I mean, what sort of regulatory, I mean, obviously check all your products and whatever, but any big broad brush regulations in Canada? I mean, I know sort of in the US, you had the Reg NMS, the Regulation National Market System, which sort of governed all the rules of how the US equity markets should work. All this, best execution rules and national best bid and offer and all that. And then in Europe, we're outside the EU now, sitting here in the UK, but I was involved in this MiFID 1, MiFID 2, etc.
Yeah.
Vast regulations. I mean, pages of the stuff, making the markets fair, reasonable, whatever. But it's trying to understand. Anyway, and what was the Canadian? Is there a Reg NMS and MiFID?
I believe it's National Instruments.
Yeah.
So the NI. So they, Ciro is one of those players that looks after the best bid and offer. They make sure that's done. We, as an exchange, have to calculate our own, make sure that when we see a trade, that it doesn't violate those rules. Yes, pages and pages of regulation, and we have people dedicated to the regulatory space that are specifically looking at, okay, have we done the right things from a trading perspective, then a market data perspective, then a capital formation perspective, and listing perspective, as well as the fact that we have our clearing houses, so we have to do the same. That's the CDS and CDCC, which is CDS is for the equities, fixed income, and CDCC is on the derivative side.
So we're going slightly out of order, but I think it's logical, because I think we're logically into talking about the IP, not intellectual property. I'm trying to remember that. The information provider, is that
information processor?
Processor, not provider. Processor. And we'll come on to the generic exchange data stuff in a second. But just talk us through the Canadian information processor, which is it's not as official as the US consolidated tape, the SIP and all that side, or what is being proposed in Europe. But it is what? Rather than me preambling, you tell me what it is. How wonderful it is.
Slightly disagree with that one. It is very, very official.
Okay. Official. I'm gonna. This is a classic.
Let me tell you how
ChatGPT says it's not, but I believe you more than I believe ChatGPT.
I'll tell you why I'm saying that. We, as the TMX, apply to become the information processor of Canada to the regulators.
Who did you apply to? Who?
To the regulators, the CSA.
Yeah.
They then see our application. They will approve or deny it. They have luckily from my perspective, approved it for the last 15 years. Right. We have been the information processor of Canada. We've called it TMX IP or TMX Information Processor. and I guess for the viewers, what is the information processor? It is the consolidated tape of Canada. It's the only one in Canada, and it's the only one globally that also provides level 2 data. So a few differences from the US to Canada is US provides level 1 data only, and you contract directly with their SIP, and you only deal with them. In Canada, slightly different. It is you deal directly with each exchange as well as the IP, so that way you're in constant communication with each one of them. And the TMX IPs provides it all, in a nice package. We put in the same format. We make sure that you're able to access the data. There are a couple of products under there, like I said, level 2. That's our CDF feed, so you can get every exchange's data. That is there's 5 exchanges in 2 dark market.
Is that full depth of order book or a partial depth of order book?
It's full order book is that one. And then we also have the level 1 as well, which is the partial, right? So so that'll be TSX with its books, TSX Venture, Alpha, Alpha X, and Alpha Dark. CBOE, which is now Match Now and Neo combined, previously called Neo. CSE, NASDAQ, TradeLogic, Instinet, and LiquidNet would be your 2 dark markets.
So you get a single feed which has this. You call it national best bid and offer like the Americans do. Do you use the same?
We call it the CBBO, Canadian best bid and offer.
Canadian, good. Yeah, because it should be the US best bid and offer, not the. Again, we could talk about our friends down south of you and their little foibles and how there's nothing outside of the US matters. Anyway, I have so many friends in America, I've lost them all now.
Yes.
Anyway, so it's the Canadian best bid and offer. Now, when you say you deal with all the individual, so you can get a physical single pipe. Physically, does that mean I only have to have one connection and it all comes in through a single feed? So that's the physical.
And in one format. So one of the big pieces, so if you were to deal with every exchange individually, each one will have its own format, its own.
So you've normalized it in some way, a bit like a data aggregator would.
Yeah, very much.
Effectively the same. Okay, so that's a technical. And then when one pays for it, if I'm going to pay for it, do I pay the IP a single amount of Canadian dollars, or do I have to? Sorry, my fingers are. Do I have to pay each individual exchange?
Yeah, it is each individual exchange because it works on a cost pass through. This again makes sure that you're in connection with your exchanges and talking to them about it. There's a data access fee that you pay the IP, but that we kind of build into the TMX data links.
And if you buy the IP, you buy everything. You can't say I want half the IP. I want the IP, but I don't want one of the providers for whatever reason.
Yes. So you can do that with our level 2 stuff. So level 2 wise, you can say I want TSX and CSE only, or NASDAQ only, or and the likes. And so in the level 1, you cannot. It is kind of it's bundled together. Otherwise, it is consolidated one level feed.
So why? So I understand. I think I understand the IP concept, but then customers will have more individual bilateral relationships with each of these exchanges. So RBC will have a relationship with TMX, and they'll have a relationship with the NASDAQ iteration, and they'll have a relationship with the CBOE iteration, and then Toronto Dominion will also have this. Why would a customer, if they can get this all through the IP, then what are they going to buy on a bilateral basis? What else? What is not in the IP that you guys are selling? Not just you guys, but the exchanges in Canada.
I guess you're getting more to what exchanges are doing in the value side of data.
I mean, the IP is a feed of level 1 and level 2 real-time data. That's where you'd buy that. This is a question rather than a statement. Is that where you would buy that? And then you would buy other quote unquote stuff, technical phrase there, from exchanges like TMX. What is that other stuff? I mean, maybe it is value added. What else is there?
just to cut from the beginning piece, you can get that pipe from the TMX IP. You can also go to each venue directly.
But why would you?
So here's a point on that is 85% of the clients that use the IP are actually outside of Canada, and
right.
that's and the big piece of that is the formatting as well as the ease of access. So you don't want to have to write multiple different feed readers. Also, locally within Canada, a lot of our local companies, the banks like you've mentioned, already have physical connectivity and feed readers to each.
Because they have a more sophisticated requirement. Maybe they want lower latency, rawer data. Because the IP, as good as it is, has added another layer which slows it down.
Any consolidated feed.
Okay.
So even you'll find the same thing as soon as the European one comes into play.
Yeah.
There's extra hops in the journey, and therefore it takes longer for the data to hit from one place to another, and people will take longer to trade on it. So you'll find that those that need that lower latency will still definitely go directly to the markets they need to be at quicker.
And then again, I was interesting when I had my conversation with Mark Randall of the GSE. Anybody watching, look back a couple of episodes, and you can see that conversation with him. And they at the GSE were focusing on analytics. He was very passionate about analytics, not least because they had data that they could sell that wasn't part of the IP that was unique to them, about things like ranking or things like okay, where do you sit in the ranking? There were analytics that they could provide that nobody could extract from the data that they just bought from the exchange. It was sort of I'm waffling a bit. I mean, do you do similar
I think
services?
You've touched on it quite heavily, quite a bit, is that exchanges are looking for new ways to provide data, new value adds. How do I make things easier, better, more data, more insights for my clients? And so you've noticed that there's this trend of exchanges doing acquisitions. We've seen it with
diversifying.
We've seen it with the Deutsche Börse, and they've gone into the Forex, for example, or other spaces. It's how exchanges are functioning going forward. Similarly, for the TMX, we've acquired two businesses: Verify, which is an index business, as well as Wall Street Horizon, which is now a corporate events business.
Got it.
And so you'll notice that this is a trend that market data exchanges are going to be doing, because there's only so much I can show you from my my trading engine. And how do I create more for you so that you can see more? Is I have to go and acquire it, or I have to access it somehow. We're doing something now called consolidated volume, which is a real-time view of consolidated volume without the need of subscriber fees, but we have to go and acquire those data sets from the other exchanges, put it together, make sure it functions correctly, get the contracting in place, make sure that we've satisfied the exchange requirements, and then be able to provide it to the clients. So you're going to find data value is what we're mining all the time. We from an exchange's perspective, we have to look for new ways to get, and that then comes back full circle to the client centricity of it. No, before you could, when an exchange didn't have data divisions, it's very easy to say, I'm going to make a level one feed, and here you go. It's in my own format, and these are the fields, and take it. Whereas now, the newer generation of people have to definitely go and say, okay, do you want it to look like this? Do you want it in an API? Do you want it in which fields would you like to see, or how would you want it to present itself to you? Do you want end of day? Do you need real time? And so those kind of questions in those meetings are going to then derive what we can then create and create that value from. We have an analytics here at the TMX as well, which we've been building up for a number of years. We look into things like ESG. We have our own index side that we look at, as well as things in like fixed income. We don't even trade fixed income on the exchange, but we look at what data products we can create there.
Because they're all interrelated. These markets are fundamentally interrelated.
Absolutely. And like I said, we're the window to the markets for our clients. So if you come to us as a secured venue, a group of people that I can deal with, that I know is going to give me the data in a timely fashion, in a welcome fashion, I know if they give me something else, it's going to have that same TMX stamp of approval on it, and that's where the value comes in there.
Vyasan, we're coming 46 minutes in. Let's tackle what could be argued to be the elephant in the room, which is I want to ask you, why does everybody love exchanges? Sorry, I'm being facetious here. I mean, I've had a few conversations, and I have lots of conversations with clients. I've had a few on this podcast. And there's this strange phenomenon where quite a few customer firms, I mean, they really sort of believe in their heart of hearts that somehow some of the exchanges, of course not TMX, are somehow evil. They've actually used that word. I mean, it's strange. There's this emotive feeling, and I think it's something I want to tease out of you, because I think one of the things is, obviously, nobody likes spending money on it. You always want to pay less or whatever. But I think there are things like arguments about lack of transparency, argument about price increases that are way above inflation and bear no relation to added value, are just put there because they can be put there. Changes made without enough notice. I'm trying to think of the list that you will hear most customers complaining about. There's one complaint they have, which isn't the fault of any single exchange. It's just that exchanges have complicated policies, and then there are lots of exchanges with lots of complicated policies, and it just becomes complicated. I mean, so, Vyasan, what's the answer to all this?
Okay, here's your 3-step approach. No, I'm just kidding. So, I mean, the thing is, exchanges, when I'm at exchange, any of the two, I'll be in 2 of them now, and they both function very similarly. That internally they see themselves as their own entity. Yeah. I think a lot of the time it's important for us to see the impact to the client that they're seeing, the person that's sitting at the desk that has to deal with those agreements, that has to go and ask for the budget, that has to go and find that, and understanding that when we deal with those people, including the likes of our vendors that we deal with, they have 600 suppliers of data. When I tell somebody at a data vendor, oh, I'm going to change this field, he goes, okay, how important is it? And, where in the queue do I put it? Or I'm going to increase my prices by 10%. And they go, okay, now I need to go find that along with the other 58% that I'm increasing my other things. And so I think a big importance of those changes is understanding the impact of those clients. So that's the first point. The second point is, okay, how we address that. So what we're looking at, what we do is, yes, we try and keep it related to CPI. But what we've taken the approach of is going along the lines of half to only CPI. In Canada, that's sitting at 2.7% at the moment, somewhere around there, or if you look at the CPI with the energy. So between half to full CPI. And what that does is it allows us to say, okay, we economic pressures hit everybody. How do we do it and make sure that clients are serviced? Our economic pressures are relieved to some extent, but it's not price gouging.
Right.
That's the big worry. And I think historically there have definitely been some places where people were going, okay, let me increase by 9, 10, 15% on a product. And it's without the value add, to your point, it just grates clients' gears. Again, that person has to then go to their superiors and say, hey, this product's being increased by 15%. Okay, what are we getting out of it? No, we're not getting anything. It's exactly the same as it was before. Right. And that's a very difficult conversation for that. I feel for those people, because there's a lot of pressure on them to make sure that costs stay in tow, along with we haven't even touched the policy section of your question yet. And this is a huge piece already. So half CPI is definitely an area that we've taken and, ideas that we've come across with. And what that does is allows us to say, okay, a little bit of economic pressure of us, but at the same time, we now have the pressure of ourselves to say, build up products and value add that's going to build out the next half of that CPI, so that we as a business internally can stay within at least within the range where we should be.
You need to make more than CPI, because if you're just making CPI, all you're doing is keeping your head at water. You want to grow your profitability, I would presume.
Of course, we all have families to feed, right?
Yeah.
So, the thing that, the piece behind that is, if you create the right level of value, you can garner a lot of clients across the globe. What we've noticed, for instance, your talk with John Willock talked about a lot of Asia clients. How are we servicing clients in different areas of the globe?
So rather than trying to gouge money out of your existing customers, you'd like to find new customers who are not, and that's where you'd potentially get more growth from by selling your core products and services just to new different customers.
New different customers, or in the realm of the same customers, how do we add value to them? Right,
new products to existing customers.
Yeah, here's this product that you've been doing the same thing with.
Yeah.
So that's one piece, and then there's also another pressure on exchanges to say, okay, we've created this thing again. TMX Canada being what's deemed as a first world country. When you create a new product, a lot of other exchanges tend to follow those.
Yeah.
So we have a pressure on ourselves and to our vendors and our clients that go, when we create something, it has to absolutely make sense, because 6 or 7 other exchanges are going to follow suit, and that means there's that impact on those vendors and clients.
But if it's an added value idea, and I was talking to Mark at JSC about this, if it's a good added value idea that one exchange can do, then frankly another exchange could do the same. They're not competing. So Toronto's not competing with Johannesburg. If Johannesburg had found some clever thing that they found more value in the data that they've got, and they can package that up, then you could do the same idea. I mean, I was asking Mark, is there much cooperation? It's not collusion, I don't think. If
more often than not, it would be, because most of the products and stuff that exchanges offer are all publicly made available. So it's not, there's no level of like, oh, how are you going to create it? And let's create it the similar or change it a certain way. That definitely doesn't happen. I'm as you're aware, I'm a co-chair on the exchanges committee at FISD, and I have firsthand experience that is not the case. That anyone's asking how are you creating things. If anything, those meetings are quite a little bit quiet.
I think there's a great nervousness about collusion.
Absolutely.
I'm a little bit worried that sometimes that nervousness about collusion means that there could be some innovative cooperation. If another exchange has got a good idea about something they can do with their data, then if you could do that clever thing with your data, that's not collusive. The fact that XYZ exchange had done this and that and the other, and then they've packaged that up and sold that for sort of $100 a month, and you say, well, that's a good idea, we'll do that with our data. And it's not detrimental to the customer, I don't think.
I don't think so. Again, people will only pay for that if it makes sense for them. I've had products that I've seen products where clients are like, I'm not going to touch that because it doesn't mean anything for me. I've seen other products where the clients go, I don't care how much it is, I need to sign because it's that important.
And I think the negativity creeps in. What I've just described, what you're describing, is where you've worked out there's some data that you've got and you packaged it up and you've added this with that and you put a pink bow on it and whatever, and then you go out and you sell it. That's a good thing. Whereas if a client has worked out the data you've already sold them, they've added things together, they put their pink bow on it and a green bow, and they've added it with some other data from Johannesburg and whatever and everything, and they've managed to create some real value out of it. And you peer over and that was interesting. We're now going to put in our contract that if you do that, you have to pay us some extra money. So you haven't done anything new. You've just noticed that they've done something with it and then changed your licensing. So now, you're riding the bike down the street. Oh, we didn't say you could ride it down the street. We just said you could ride it. Yeah,
I hear you.
I think that's where some of the niggles come from.
Frustrations. Yeah, and again, I think a lot of that comes from how market data was probably initially created. There was a lot of people that had to be hard to be able to get that message across. I think there's definitely a space for us to work better with clients, and I think we have been doing that for the better part of the last decade or so. it's definitely a change to what I've seen in terms of from the outside being a data distributor and then going inside and say, okay, it doesn't feel the same. And it could be easy for me to say, oh, it doesn't feel the same because you work there. But, when you talk to the client, then it's difficult discussions. You can see the way that people approach it, and the way that exchanges approach it, especially, personally, when I approach it, I always try to, see with the impact to them directly. But, those kinds of changes, I think in these established markets, that would be something like a derived license, which is in place for most of the exchanges already, in which case the difficult discussions going, we have a license for that. It's already in place. We've already agreed to that.
But it'd be like derived or saying, actually not derived. If you add two numbers together, there's a charge. But if you take one away from another, that's a different charge. Whereas it used to be any manipulation.
Yes,
we're at the end anyway. We're at 57 minutes, so we were about to go down the rabbit hole. I mean, we could have talked a long time about some of those issues, but we just don't have time. Vyasan, I always offer my guests at this point: is there something that you wished you'd really wanted to say to the world that I didn't give you a chance to do because I kept butting in and interrupting you? So now you've got a couple of minutes. Couple of things. One thing.
Sure.
Final thoughts for the market data industry.
I think, I would just say, I think communication is going to be utmost important. I think we've touched on a few of the notes here that talked about, how do we collaborate better? I would say any client, reach out to your exchange, have constant dialogues with all of them. I know it's tough. I know there's a lot of them. I know there's a lot of vendors, but being in the know is always better than finding out later. And I think the more you talk, the more you include and understand where things are going from, it's going to make your road long-term a lot easier, because then we can create together. It's something that we've noticed heavily is that the clients that I talk to the most are often the ones that end up being the most happy, because we've had the ability to have the input on the products. And that's a different aspect that we're definitely trying to put into place now. How many of them can we speak to? How many of them can we reach out to? So, like you said, you'll have my contacts there. I'm very happy to direct any
and you'll hop on a plane and you'll go anywhere, anytime.
Yeah. No. Anytime, if my wife allows.
You might end up doing a lot of traveling to get that word out. Look, Vyasan, it's been great, a pleasure talking. You and I have had a technical journey. This is take 2. We did do one and we had lots of technical problems. So I'm pleased you gave me another chunk of your time. That was very generous. Thank you so much for doing this. Don't hang up, but I'm saying cheerio online.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome.